Hello, everybody. Thank you all for joining us today. We're going to wait maybe a couple more minutes to have everyone roll in and get settled in, but thank you again for joining us. I hope everyone's week 5 is doing okay. I hope it's not too stressful right now. Right. For those of y'all coming in, we'll be starting soon. Thank you again for joining us for the Internship Panel event today. All right, so I think it's good to start now since we do have a lot of really important information to share with you all. But let's get started with our internship panel event. And my name is Alina. I am one of the career consultants at SARC, which is the Social Sciences Academic Resource Center. And I'm joined by another career consultant, Sophie. So Sophie, you want to introduce yourself real quick?
Hi everyone, I'm Sophie. I'm another SARC peer consultant.
Awesome. And we also have our director of SARC, Carissa. She's sharing her screen right now. So let's go ahead and move on into our agenda for today. With the next slide. Awesome. So we're going to have the panelists quickly introduce themselves and then discuss briefly what an internship is and the importance of an internship, and then go into the Q&A section that I'm sure all of y'all are really curious about, and we have some questions prepared for the panelists to ask them. And right after that will be open Q&A, so that's going to be the opportunity for you as attendees to be able to ask the panelists any questions that you have about their personal internship experience or any general questions you have for them. And then we'll do a quick closing. But if we go ahead and go on to the next slide, I just want to thank all the panelists again for being here today. Let's go ahead and start with introductions with Akila.
Hi everyone, my name is Akila. I'm a fourth year business economics major and be talking about my internship at Deloitte as a risk financial advisor intern.
And hi everyone, my name is Jocelyn and I'm a third year business economics and psychological science double major, and I'll be talking about my current internship at Tesla as an HR and people's team intern under the benefits team, and can answer any questions about my internship at VMware last summer as well. I'm excited to chat.
Hi everyone, my name is Chloe. I'm a second year majoring in sociology and minoring in management. I'll be talking about two of my positions at Wedding Salon as an event production intern and at Leading Purpose as a PR and communications intern today.
Hi everyone, my name is Steven. I'm a second year human biology and economics major, and I'll be talking about my health consulting internship with Cope Health Solutions today.
Okay, so by the end of this panel, we hope that you all will be able to answer two key questions. The first question being, what is an internship? So an internship is a limited period of work experience offered by an organization to a student or a trainee with or without pay. Over the next half an hour or so, we're going to help you answer the second question, which is, what does it mean to be an intern? Next slide, please. So now each panelist will have the chance to answer commonly asked questions regarding their internship experience. If you have any questions for them, please feel free to use the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen, and we will address those at the end. So our first question, what was the beginning of your internship search like? How early did you start applying or searching, and what positions or criteria were you looking for in an internship?
This is directed to anyone, so if anyone wants to start, go ahead.
Okay, I can go ahead and kick it off. But I guess for me, searching for internships in the beginning, it was just like, it was kind of daunting. Like, it's an intimidating thing. You know, you kind of come out from like high school, going to college, you're like, I want to have an internship, but don't really know where to start. So I guess in terms of like the platforms that I use, definitely LinkedIn, Handshake was where I found my first like on-campus job. Wasn't an internship, but it was definitely an experience that let me gain a lot of soft skills that I could talk about in interviews moving forward. But yeah, definitely, I think lots of rejections for sure that I'm sure a lot of people's process will also be like. So I think what I've learned throughout is just like, you know, don't give up, be patient with it. And for me specifically, I think my biggest advice is just like, you know yourself and be yourself, and then just keep on going, apply to things. Don't close the door on yourself before you could potentially even like, you know, put your application in. But yeah, it definitely took a long time. I think my first official internship, I guess, was the summer after my first year, but it was just at a local college consulting company. So nothing big and flashy, but it's the little also the little ones and the experiences that also count. So yeah.
Yeah, I can go next. I also had a very similar experience to Jocelyn, where it was definitely like a numbers game. I made many spreadsheets throughout like my college career just to have like a tracker, and I think that was like really important. I think for me specifically with Deloitte, I was able to get it through like UCI. So I think utilizing Handshake was an opportunity that was really beneficial towards me, especially like my first and second year. Like if you're younger, I would definitely suggest utilizing those resources more, just because it is a lot harder through like LinkedIn or through a company website to get these internships that a lot of like third and fourth years are applying to. So I think in the beginning of your career, you should look for smaller positions, maybe that don't necessarily pay, but they definitely offer a lot of value as far as experience.
Just to add on to that, I think the beginning of my internship search was a little bit weird because, I mean, COVID happened and then like we all heard about internships canceling with summer 2020 and all that. So for myself, it was a little bit of a panic because I had my prior thing canceled, and then seconding Handshake, LinkedIn, really having those UCI affiliated resources to reach out to recruiters and find those opportunities. So it started off a little panicked, but I definitely think it's a numbers game, and putting quality time into it with spreadsheets and such really helps.
Yeah, and then just to add on to everything else that everyone has said, the beginning of your internship search process is definitely rough. It was definitely difficult for me as well. I think something that maybe not a lot of people are aware of, or something that isn't emphasized enough, is to really go in and like do your research on your field, know what your interests might be, and just get to know just what you might be taking on or what you might particularly be interested in, just so that when you're searching, it's a lot easier to filter. And I think just for some people, it might be a little bit more comforting just knowing what you're getting yourself into. And that's something that really helped me in the beginning. I didn't really jump in terms of applying. Just as Steven said, it was a very like panicked time during the beginning of the pandemic. So instead of that, I was kind of just looking out for people that I could talk to, and like researching specific like job opportunities, or researching just what you would do in the industry that I was interested in.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing some of that insight, and we'll go ahead and move on to our next question. So our next question is, how did you find your internship? I know a lot of y'all already talked about some resources that you utilize to find your opportunity, but maybe talk a little bit about how you applied and what the application process is like.
I can go first. So I basically applied my second year for my third year internship, and I went through a UCI event called Rise, and this is held by Accounting Association. So I believe that it's actually coming up February 16th. So I would definitely recommend to any second years right now wanting an internship later on to like go apply for this program. So there's like numerous firms, not only just like the big four, but there's also like consulting for like Protiviti and also like RSM. So going to this, like, I think specifically this event opened my perspective on just because it's held by like accounting association, it definitely opened me up to different like target companies that I definitely would be interested in. So it's specifically targeting second years, and it's a summer leadership program. So it follows with your internship the following summer. So after I networked at Rise, I basically just submitted a cover letter and resume to the companies that I picked. I only picked 3 just so that I could not limit my like networking experiences. And then if you're invited for an interview after, it's a 2-part process.
I can talk about mine next, but whenever I'm looking for internships, I primarily utilize Handshake and LinkedIn as well. For this current internship that I'm holding, I found it through Handshake. And one of the most important resources that I also want to stress is just resources on campus that are already kind of like given to you. So um, the Social Sciences Academic Resource Center for one, and for me, it was the Division of Career Pathways. It was definitely a lot of help in terms of when I was looking for this particular internship. I applied online. I think the interview process took about a month. It was 2 rounds, and then I ended up finding out maybe the month after I initially applied.
I can go next. So for my current internship right now, it is a for us winter spring internship, but for Tesla they just go by spring internship because most of their interns are on semester system. But in kind of like terms of my process, I just saw it on LinkedIn I think over summer. So it just took me directly to the company site, filled in all my application, all those fun things that you copy and paste from your resume like normal. And then I think they took about like 2 months or maybe even 3 months to really get back to me. So it was kind of a surprise in my inbox when the recruiter reached out saying, hey, like I have this opportunity open. Are you still interested in interviewing? I said, sure, let's do it. So overall, the process was about 3 rounds. The first round was with the hiring manager. Second round was with 2 team members. And the final round interview was with the senior manager of benefits, which is the team that I'm currently working for. And then after that, there was actually like a package, like an informational package thing I had to send to the executive team to review. Don't really know what that meant or entailed, but just filled out, like wrote a couple of sentences about myself. And then I think the entire process took about like 1.5 months. So definitely, I think on the slower side for the company itself, just because it was a busy season for the team and scheduling interviews and stuff. But yeah, overall, I think all of my internship experience, I usually look on LinkedIn and you'll take it on the company site. But just like a side note of advice is that most job postings will be posted on the company site directly first. So if you have a specific company in mind that you're really interested in, I'd say go ahead and set like a job alert right on their company site, and you can get kind of like the firsthand notification that they're posted there. But yeah, for me, it was LinkedIn and waited, as you can see, like 2 months. So I kind of even forgot that I applied, but yeah.
I think for myself, I previously volunteered with Kaiser and they worked directly in hand with Cope. So I was on this email list and I was like, whoa, like this directly falls into my niche. So Cope itself is a really small company. And so I did a lot of research on sort of what they specialized in, how my volunteering experience connected with their mission and how it provide value to them. And I remember this, but I spent like 2 nights like really revising a good cover letter since it was such a small company, so I knew that they read it. So at the end of the day, I sent that cover letter in, and some of the other experiences, it was about like a month and a half wait. That was like my first real sort of like corporate internship recruiting role, and I was like, whoa, a month is kind of a long time. So I was getting a little panicked, but I mean, at the end of the day, we got through a couple rounds of interviews with the last interview being with the director of, I think it was director of consulting. And so we were talking on there and they actually referenced my cover letter because on that cover letter, I was able to really reference how my previous experiences and story really tied into what they were doing. So how I would contribute to them and how they would also contribute to me. So that's how I applied.
Okay, thank you all for sharing. Let's move on to the third question, which is, what was one of your biggest struggles, if any, during the recruiting process, and how did you overcome it? overcome it, and what did you learn?
I can answer this one first. In terms of biggest struggles, I think, as everyone said, it's a numbers game. I think really detaching myself from rejections or getting ghosted by recruiters or maybe just never hearing a response, that was something that I had to deal with a lot in terms of like just coming to terms with the fact that it's normal and that it's just all part of the process. It's part of the journey to actually get to the internship that you might have in the future. Um, just along with that, just being able to really go at your own pace for these things. I know we're college students and a bunch of us are also all applying to internships, but everyone is doing it at their own pace in the sense that maybe some people are networking first, maybe some people are doing more research, maybe some people are applying by the masses, but to really keep in mind that like my own journey to my internship or the process that I'm taking is really mine and that I should look for the ones that really interest me instead of just applying and applying and applying was something that I really had to keep in mind during my process. And even though it was one of the biggest struggles, it was also something that helped me gain a lot in the sense that I was able to really become more productive at my own pace and just learn not to treat it as a competition of sorts, but rather just as a learning curve.
I think on my end, it was really trying to balance the quantity of applications with the quality of applications because especially at the beginning of COVID, when you're looking for an internship to fill that summer 2020 void or any void at all, honestly, there's that anxiety at the back of your head that's like, oh, I need to get an internship or I need to like get some sort of experience, right? I mean, I think we all feel that. And so really trying to balance like the quantity that you send out because I mean, conventionally we think that the more applications that we send out, the better chances we have. And that's definitely true, but also balancing that with the quality of the applications, like really tailoring yourself to the role, to the mission of the company, researching, networking, having that quality to complement the quantity. That was a big struggle just to like balance time on top of that. So there's that.
Yeah, so I can go next. I think for me, it was dealing and still dealing with like the whole idea of imposter syndrome coming in, especially as like a second year. I really was scared because I wasn't, I didn't have as much relevant experience. I only had one essentially that was like very applicable to the job. And especially because that second year summer, I was going to be working at a gaming company that focused on like marketing and e-commerce. So I was really nervous to see if I would even be like, like looked at as a candidate just because maybe my experiences didn't align. But I quickly realized that like it's more about like changing my description and identifying keywords used for like risk advisory consultants and then restructuring my bullet points based on that, which I think was like the most beneficial.
And then for me, I think it's like a mix of what everyone else has already said, but I think definitely just kind of facing like the rejections I've gotten, especially some that I've gone to like final round interviews and I felt really good coming out of them, but alas, the wonderful, unfortunately, blah, blah, blah email came and you're like, oh, darn it. So I think kind of just jumping back from that and thinking of it as just like, that's one step done, but the rest of the applications aren't like interlinked with them, they're completely separate. They're independent on its own. So just, putting my best foot forward for all the other application processes that I'm in and just like trying my best and thinking that everything happens for a reason and it will work out. And then I think something else was just to identify what I'm like really passionate and genuinely interested in. I think for me before, it was definitely all kind of mass sending in applications, anything HR related or even people's related. I'm like, all right, let me apply. But I think towards the end, it gets really tiring, just kind of what like Stephen said about like the mass of like the quantity of applications that you kind of send in. Really, I started really looking at like what I'm actually interested in and would I be happy in, the internship that if I were to get this opportunity. So I started identifying kind of the specific teams or projects that I think I could really contribute to, and then really focusing on brushing up my resume for that specific position. And instead of kind of spreading myself thinner on just kind of like sending in everything here and there. So yeah, again, just don't be discouraged with rejections. It happens to all of us. And yeah, just keep going.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing. I seem to identify some common themes with like really big struggles during the recruiting process, but hopefully the insight that the panelists provided was helpful. And as we're in like the middle like check mark of our questions, feel free to ask any questions that you have in the Q&A. Right now we don't have any, but that's okay. We do have the pre-submitted questions for later as well. But we'll go ahead and move on to our next question. So what were some of the logistics of your internship? So some questions related to that would be what did your schedule look like? Was it remote? Who are you in contact with throughout your internship? Things like that.
I can go first. So in terms of logistics, so right now at Tesla, my internship is completely remote. So just working at home, and I am working full time. So I think most of the internships that they open, if not all, are asking for interns to work full time. So in kind of like our little intern chat, I think most people actually take like a gap quarter to kind of like go on site, because a lot of interns are actually like manufacturing, engineering, so they actually have to like work in the factories and stuff. So for me, but I'm virtual and 40 hours, and I'm a part-time student right now. And I think the main point of contact for me before I onboarded was definitely my recruiter. So I asked a bunch of questions to her about logistics and stuff. They provided me with a work laptop and kind of some accessories to be better suited for work from home. And then in general, I think it's just kind of like meetings here and there every day. We have like weekly meetings now and there. So I was actually hopping off of one before I jumped into this one. And yeah, I think overall, like communication is a really big thing in a virtual internship. So just kind of everyone like pinging each other on Teams or whatever communication channel the company uses. It's definitely very prominent, like random messages here and there, since you can't just peek over their cubicle and be like, hey, what's up? You know, let me ask a question. So yeah, that's just kind of the overall gist of what my internship is right now.
On my end, my internship was about 20 hours per week, and it was fairly flexible, especially during COVID. We worked remotely, and I was given some software. So they had this thing like Microsoft Remote Desktop, and then you'd like log into all the company's files and things. So logistically, I had about a few weekly meetings, and I'd have some deliverables every week. So like either research or some slides or something. And I worked with the consultants on this. So I would be researching, presenting recommendations, and the consultants themselves would be looking over it. And it would go up this chain of command where like, okay, this looks good. So eventually deliverables would get presented to the executives themselves, where they would be given to our clients and things like that. So that was logistically how it worked. I was really in contact with the consultants and the director herself. And my team was fairly small. It was about like 3 to 4 people. So I could always go to them. You know, we had like phone numbers, we had casual chats and everything like that. So overall, it was a really great work environment. I think it was nicely flexible, but fairly challenging to, or adequately challenging that enough to make me grow.
Yeah, so for me, so this was last summer. So it's supposed to be like a traditional 10-week program. Actually, at the Deloitte office, I was going to be working in Costa Mesa, but because of COVID, I wasn't able to have this traditional internship experience. So I actually had a 2-week virtual program instead. And I initially was really hesitant and sad about this just because I was really scared about how this would be restructured, but it was still a really eye-opening experiences, and it focused on basically a 2-week client simulation. I was also like paired with a buddy very early on, and I had my main recruiter as my point of contact. But I think the main thing for me was I had set up multiple coffee chats over the course of those weeks. So I definitely gained multiple perspectives on the process of moving like laterally in a company and how I would work essentially as like a full-time employee.
So I'm currently in my internship right now at Wedding Salon, and logistics wise, what it looks like is about, I think, 3 to 4 meetings like with all the interns. We have a team about 21 people, so on the smaller side in terms of a holistic number, but all of us are separated into separate teams as well, smaller teams of 3 or 4 um, that are either categorized into client relations, event production, and et cetera. I'm leading two teams right now, so a lot of meetings happen early in the mornings just because they run on Eastern time instead. Um, yeah, I think I work. Oh no, not I think, but I work around 15 to 20 hours a week ish. But yes.
Okay, thanks for sharing, everyone. So now we're going to move on to our last question. Next slide, please. So what is one thing you took away from the recruiting process or the internship itself? Are there things you would have done differently or things you will continue to do moving forward?
I think one of the biggest things that I can suggest is that the internship recruiting process itself is really dehumanizing. It really puts you through like this system where you're really like, letter or words on like a resume and like numbers and everything. And I think it's nice to put that perspective in that at the end of the day, these recruiters, the team that you want to work with, they're all people. And so if you can really connect with them on the humanizing side, it really makes the process a lot more bearable, and it does improve your chances as well. Being able to really hammer in your story, your narrative, how that aligns with your experiences, and put that in a comprehensive package so that when you walk away from your interview, the recruiter is like, oh, this is that person. This is what I'm going to remember them for, and here's why they're qualified. Being really able to connect with them on that human side is underrated in my opinion, and something that we should all strive for.
Yeah, so I would say that something that's really important, and I think that is very applicable, is like you may have a lot of experiences on your resume or throughout your life, even if it's volunteering, but you don't necessarily know how to apply it. But just keep in mind that all of these experiences are relevant, and it's more about researching that company and that position, looking up keywords and seeing how you can restructure your resume specifically to entail some of these information. Because I think that was a very like an underlying factor that a lot of students don't take into consideration. And then also kind of like same as Steven, like applying to multiple companies, but don't over apply because that might affect like the time and energy you invest in each company. For Rise specifically, it's a very competitive process, but I think because I only focused on one or two companies, I was able to really nurture those relationships that I had with the recruiters and really maximizing. I know specifically in February, there's a lot of events, especially for like Big Four accounting and consulting firms. So just on UCI campus. So really opportunizing on them. And feel free to like reach out to me if you have any questions about those events.
Something that I learned, and just I think adding on to what the other panelists have talked about today, just every experience is an experience. It's very easy to overlook the unpaid ones, maybe the volunteer ones, but definitely um, everything that you really like sign up for and want to apply for, it's definitely going to be helpful in the long run. You're going to learn skills that you might not even realize that you're learning in the beginning. For example, if you're sending out emails to someone for your supervisor and you don't think that it's going to help in the future, it might help you in terms of um, just being able to really recognize how to employ email etiquette. But just little things like that that you learn in these positions that are unpaid or volunteer work, it's going to be beneficial. And that's something that I wish I had learned earlier on, just because um, you can really take on a lot of things like outside of school and outside of maybe like a paid experience that will really just like kind of cater towards your passions more, cater towards your interests, and then maybe that will help you later on in terms of finding a paid internship.
Yes, and then for me, I think echoing what everyone else has already said, but I think also to schedule in some time or just like kind of be mindful of your own time and just like take some breaks, like applying to internships, at least like for the roles that I was interested in, they're kind of consistently like rolling out, there's no like set season, but I know it's different for other functions of business. So definitely, keep note of those type of timelines, but, it's okay to take a break sometimes and to, take a few days, take a week and just not touch that at all because it does get draining sometimes. So self-care and do all that, super important. But aside from that, also just like reach out and network. I think especially in internships, just business in general, networking is such like a big thing, but it really is valuable. I think this past summer, I've reached out to past interns who've held positions that I'm interested in and just like had a chat with them like over the phone or even just message them on LinkedIn just to ask more about, their experience or any insights into interviews they could provide me. And some of them were able to share kind of like the questions that they got asked, which really helped me when preparing for my interviews. So don't be afraid to take that extra leap and just send out a cold message. You never know like who will reply to you, and they might be that one person that can kind of like help you through everything and provide you more like confidence and also just like ease and just kind of like wellness, I think, throughout the entire process to kind of like ease your stress, all of that. But yeah, in general, just like really dive deep into why you are interested in a specific position so that when you can talk about it on your interview, it really is genuine. Because I think sometimes that passion and that energy, that excitement really does shine through to your interviewers, and that might be the thing that sticks with them and could get you the offer. So yeah.
All right, thank you everyone for sharing. That is actually the end of the questions that me and Sophie have kind of come up with. But if we go on to our next slide, now is the time for our open Q&A session. So again, if you have any questions for the panelists regarding what they said, or if you have any additional questions about their specific internships, feel free to ask in the Q&A function, which is on the bottom of your screen. But as we wait for more people to ask questions, we'll go ahead and ask some questions that were submitted on the RSVP form. So let's start with an individual question for Akila. So this one asks, how can an internship help you decide what your goals and aspirations are? Or do you think that your goals and aspirations helped you know what internships to apply for?
So I think specifically on my resume, especially like my third year, it was honestly all over the place. Like I think I had a very wide variety of internship experiences, but honestly, I wouldn't change any of that for for a more traditional path for like risk advisory or like my end goal of like consulting, because I think it definitely offered me a refined perspective on what I wanted, as well as like helping me gauge what different sectors of a firm would want. And I think that helped me throughout a lot of other recruiting processes and having that really open mind and perspective on like different branches and how to work collaboratively.
Awesome, thank you. And then we also have a question for both Jocelyn and Chloe. So since you have had experience in remote internships, like what was that experience like? I know you both have already kind of discussed that throughout your presentation, but do you think there's a difference in company culture or the tasks that are assigned to you because it was remote?
Okay, I can start. So I think kind of going into a virtual internship, my first one was like this past summer when, everything kind of hit, but I think it was definitely scary because I wasn't sure like how many times we would meet, or I can't just kind of pop over and ask a question. But I think the companies that I've like worked at, they're very great in terms of like just being very, like there was a very strong like open door policy, and that culture was just very welcoming where, I could ask a really quick question and people would be there to like help and support me. So in terms of like the learning curve, I guess like was a little bit steep sometimes. Lots of screen sharing for sure, and just lots of like, oh, you're muted, or like you're whatever, like tech problems. It's just kind of always there. But just I think like I'm very grateful for both of my experiences so far. They've been very kind of like supportive in helping me learn, but also giving me the time to challenge myself and learn on my own. So just kind of within yourself, find that balance between how much kind of like guidance you would need, communicate with your manager for sure. But yeah, overall, I think the experience would have been great to be in the office, like see the people, see the offices and stuff. But overall, I think what I've learned and the kind of takeaways that I hope to gain and have gained are pretty much similar as to what it could have been in person.
I think that the struggles of doing school, remote learning, work-life balance definitely transfer into remote working as well. For my current internship, as I said before, they run on a different time zone, which has been very difficult to me just because I don't usually wake up early, and it's a big struggle when they have meetings at 9, but that's at 6 in the morning for me. But in terms of just working remotely in general and company culture, I don't think it's changed at all. I think that the company that I've worked with has implemented a lot of things that are trying to make it as collaborative and as interactive as possible. We have co-working hours, we have social hours, we have guest speakers come in to speak with the interns just for a little bit more experience and perspective on our industry and the fields that we're interested in. One of the big things about remote working or having a remote internship is that it's a really good opportunity right now. We're getting opportunities than other states that maybe we wouldn't have in the past just because we can't physically go to New York or we can't physically go to another state all the time. But that's something that I really want to stress. Like during this time in the pandemic, one of the benefits has just been being able to open the door to a lot more opportunities that you might have not had in the past.
Yes, thank you so much for your insight. And then we have another question directed to Stephen. So they are asking, is COPE mainly for UCLA students?
No, Cope originated. They partner with the UCLA programs in executive management. So they have two programs. They have a health scholar program and they have the actual corporate firm itself. The firm does more consulting side and business development projects, but they do host this volunteering initiative called Health Scholars, where they partner with hospitals such as Kaiser Permanente to offer clinical experience. And so it's not only for UCLA students, it's really, the internships themselves are applicable and available to everybody. And the Health Scholar program itself, again, if you're within the vicinity of hospital that they offer it at, it's available to anyone in that area.
Thank you for sharing. So I think we're getting some questions actually in the chat and the Q&A. So Sophie, do you want to take these questions?
Yeah, sure. So directed to everyone, how much do you research a company or the representatives of said company before applying or interviewing for an internship? What information do you usually look for and where do you go find it? Let's answer those two first.
I can chime in here. So for me personally, when I do kind of preparation or like research into a company, I usually start with like my interviewer if I get their name and kind of position. So I do a quick search on LinkedIn, look at their past experiences and see what they're currently doing. If they have bullet points under, their current role, what they're working on, definitely I note that down and see if I can come up with any questions to be like to like really ask about their role, because what people like to do is to talk about themselves. So kind of just like ask what is maybe like a challenge that their team is facing, and then that kind of usually goes into a pretty interesting conversation that they feel like, oh, that's such a good question. So that kind of comes from the research that I do of the person. In terms of the company, for me, because I've been and is still pursuing like HR roles, I really like to dive in deep onto the company culture and the values. So quick Google search that is like Tesla values or something or culture, and then there usually is like a whole list of like their main kind of mission statement or the things that they're about. And I really try to ask that also during the interview, like at the end when they give you time to ask questions. You're like, how do you usually or like how have you seen these values really be integrated on a day-to-day basis, and then they'll probably like give a quick spiel. And then something that I think in general what makes a good interview for me is just like when you're able to kind of like respond back to their answers. So it's not just kind of like a yes, thank you, and then you move on. Just try to like keep that conversation going so that it's just more of a chat rather than kind of like a very structured like Q&A type of thing. But yeah, definitely I don't spend too much, like not crazy amount of times to like look into these things. But if you feel like you have a solid foundation of like the idea of like what the company does, what their values are, the at least like general experience or kind of duties of the person that's interviewing you, I feel like for me, that's kind of where I like to start with. And then if you happen to find more information, go a little bit deeper. Always better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. And for me personally, I never want to kind of like end an interview kind of with a little bit of regret, like, oh, I wish I did a little bit deeper research or, ask this type of question. So just go into there, put in your best foot forward and, cross your fingers and, hope for the best type of thing.
And I think to add on to that, everything that you do related to your internship recruiting process is about forming these connections between what you're trying to do. I would say that when it comes to researching or, I mean, networking, anything in general, you want to create these connections between yourself and the company. When it comes to research, you want to find the most commonly, a lot of people find connections with the mission and the values of the company. I mean, that's just something that people can really connect to. But also, I would say if you're able to find like specific opportunities or niches, roles, and with the people themselves, shared experiences, if you can find those sort of connections between yourselves and the people on the company side, that's really helpful when it comes to researching. So it really comes down to sort of what you can relate to. There's no like clear objective answer as to what you should research. It really depends on your experiences and how well they align with the company. And if you're able to really integrate all of that into a comprehensive package in your application and the interview, I'd say that you've really, really improved your chances.
Yeah, I think also adding on to that, one thing that I like to do is I like to look at like some of the company perks and like see what are some of like the other like professionals, what are some of their experiences or what are the socials that they attended that they really liked. Because I think those conversations spark like more casual opportunities for you to be able to really connect with them on a personal level. And I think as far as like the company, like Jocelyn was saying, I really just kind of do like a thorough research, also look up their LinkedIn past experiences, kind of like how all of these things apply and see if you can relate to any of them, and kind of go from there.
I don't have much to add on to those, but I think that in terms of how in depth do we research, I wouldn't be too hard on yourself on it. Definitely make sure you have a good foundation. But as Jocelyn said, it's not something to like completely stress over, but definitely incorporate it into your interview prep or just any preparations you have before you go networking.
Awesome. Thank you all for your insight. Hopefully that answered your question, but let us know again if that didn't answer your question. And then there's another question in the Q&A. It says, I'm a fourth year who's taking a fifth year. Is it too late for me to find an internship? And are there any internships available for very recent alumni? If anyone has an answer to this, feel free to answer it. I'm not sure. Anyone has
It's a little
insight on
bit loaded for me to answer this as a second year, but from what I've heard, if you have that sort of student status, people are a lot more willing to take you on for opportunities compared to if you're graduating. So if you're able to hammer in that, you know, I'm a student, I'm looking for opportunities, here's what I've done, and I'm looking to grow. If you're able to put that into your personal narrative, that, I mean, it's never too late to find an internship at that rate. And if you're able to incorporate that, then I'd say your chances are as good as anyone else.
Yeah, I think adding on to that, as long as you have that student title, you're still open to a lot of opportunities. And I think recruiters will primarily ask you like, oh, why did you take on that fifth year? So having a strong answer to that and being able to like justify your reasoning, or if it's whether that's like pursuing a different major or like personal reasons, I think having a good response to that will like help you with the recruitment process as well.
And just to also quickly chime in here, I think sometimes it can get intimidating or discouraging when you see like a job description, they're only looking for like third years or, you know, or graduating seniors or something like that. But I'd say like sometimes that is a pretty strict like requirement because for some sort of like internal logistics, but for most of the time, like take it as like a recommendation. Sometimes I like to think like the employer doesn't know what they're looking for until they find you, like the candidate that they would want to hire, you know? So don't shut that door on yourself if you don't even try. But sometimes, you know, they'll be like, oh, you just don't qualify in terms of year. But if you find an opportunity that you're genuinely interested in and you might be like a few years off or something like that, just apply. You never know what would happen. And as for kind of just like finding an internship, just treat it as like, you know, you're, at the end of the day, like just like Akil and Steven said, you're a student. So just go for it. And you have a lot more power as a student than you think.
Awesome. Okay, so as of right now, there's no more questions in the Q&A, but we'll go back to some of the pre-submitted questions from the RSVP form. Sophie, do you want to do the next one?
Oh yeah. So how did you all find out what you were passionate about working for or in that field?
I can start us off. So for me, I didn't know right from the beginning that I wanted to pursue HR roles. I actually was very interested in marketing when I first came into college, just because I think it was like a very popular field. My mom was in marketing. I was like, hey, it seems kind of cool. Let me try it out. And I think it wasn't until kind of like the first internship that I had summer after my first year, where it was marketing and administrative, kind of like a mix of the two, where I realized like marketing was cool and all, but I don't think it's kind of like my zone. I didn't really have too much creativity within myself to create, graphics, but even like writing PR related things also wasn't kind of like my strengths. But what I really enjoyed was interacting with the customers that came in every day, even from answering phones, replying to emails, scheduling interviews and appointments. I thought like that was actually really cool. And I'd love to expand on opportunities that could potentially give me more of those experiences. So from there, I kind of dove a little bit deeper into HR. And really started understanding more of the different functions. So there's like so many, I think HR is really big. So if you guys have any further questions, feel free to, like reach out to me after. I feel love to, expand more, but that's kind of my pathway into how I discovered that HR is kind of my vibe.
I'm kind of on the same boat in the sense that I also came in with the idea of marketing in my mind. Just as Jocelyn said, it is something that is I've had a lot of exposure to it in the past, but I think what helped me realize was actually just the clubs and organizations that I'm in. So right now I'm planning to head into event management, event planning. Um, but a big part of who I am is a lot of design, a lot of like hands-on crafts, being able to like do things and kind of see a project go from beginning to end. And for me, that was something that I found in event planning after doing projects for ASUCI. It definitely helped a lot just being able to have hands-on experience and like um, just being able to see firsthand what this would actually entail. So that was something for me that led to discovering what I liked and my passions. And then just to reconfirm or solidify that, I reached out to people, UCI Special Events and Protocol, some people in MPI, which is an event planning association, but learning their experiences, learning about people who are actually living a day-to-day life in event management really helped me as well. Same here as well. Event planning is a smaller field in business than other fields. So I'll also be here to answer any questions if anyone's interested in event management as well.
I think when it comes to tackling that question about passion and meaning in work and all of those related topics, um, I would say that it's more important to have a direction in mind than this particular end goal. If you're able to really have like a direction where you say you want to go into marketing or consulting, or I mean, you can go even like more broader than that. You want to do something people related, or you want to do something more on the strategy side. If you're able to ask yourself these questions and have a continual direction where you want to go, that's going to help you a lot when applying for internships, because you're able to integrate probably what you did in your past, your personal experiences, into what you want to do in the future. For myself, I come from more of like a clinical healthcare background, but like some things happened in my family. There's things that made me open my eyes to the systemic disparities and all of that healthcare related system things. And that really pushed me to go into a more interdisciplinary role where I was able to combine my leadership experiences and more strategic vision with my clinical care experiences. So that would ultimately merge into what I had as a health consulting intern.
Yeah, so I think for me, I think it's really a crazy idea that like as a college student entering, like we're supposed to know exactly what we want to do. And I think that's a very common sentiment a lot of students face, is like that struggle because certain people know exactly what they want to do from the beginning. But I think being open to experiences like clubs and organizations are like your first outlet where it's not necessarily an internship, but you're able to like really gauge what other what other fields are doing. And I think for me, something that I worked with is that I knew that I was always really passionate about like public speaking. And I kind of took that and I went with like how, and I kind of applied that to different roles and see how involved I would be with public speaking and presenting. That really helped me find a more niche like field within like risk advisory or risk analysis and consulting.
Great, thank you all for sharing. We do have a question. I think this is directed to Akila. So someone's asking where they can find more information about the RISE program.
Yeah, so I think it should be under Handshake for events, but it is February 16th from 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. And then if you're still struggling to find that, just contact me and I can like send over a flyer.
Great, thanks for sharing that. And another question that we have that was pre-submitted is it possible to get an internship without any previous experience?
I can kick us off. Yeah, definitely. I think kind of we've touched upon this in our previous answers as well, but any leadership, volunteering, or any like even school projects sometimes, like they definitely are experiences that you can talk about on your interviews. It's just really about how you cater your resume and showcase that. Like that impact what you've learned when you submit the application. So don't discount any experiences that you may have had. I think one thing that I try to tell people who are just starting out, who may not have any like internship experiences per se, but are trying to, find their first one, is to just start a doc and just write down, literally list down every single experience you have, write down anything that you worked on, people that you worked with, the impact that you did, challenges maybe, and then with that whole like master doc of like experiences, start formulating, those action verbs that you can kind of include on your resume. So don't limit yourself to thinking that this might not apply. You'd be actually like kind of surprised sometimes how you can spin certain things to really cater it towards what you're interested in when applying to certain things.
Yeah, exactly what Jocelyn said. I think that it's very like sometimes we necessarily think that like, oh, only working at like a corporate job is like the only experiences that we need. But I think early on in my resume, I had a lot of leadership experience more than work experience, professional experience. And that's totally okay because a lot of the recruiters, especially as a first and second year, know that. But I would say like something that you should definitely consider if it's harder to get that internship in the beginning is to apply for those leadership positions on campus and try to involve yourself as much in these opportunities that are at UCI.
Great, thank you for your answers. We do have a couple more minutes left, so let's go into what kinds of internships are available during the COVID-19 pandemic, in person, hands-on, online, or both? And a similar question is, how widely available are internships during the COVID-19 pandemic?
I think I can speak to this as having my previous internship canceled due to COVID. At the start of it, I mean, a lot of companies plan these internships years in advance. I mean, for certain roles, you might have to apply like up to 1.5 years in advance. But for myself, when my summer 2020 internship was canceled, um, a lot of the companies and government agencies themselves were not prepared for the COVID-19 pandemic, and they were fully planning on in-person things. So, I mean, obviously it's a big budgetary item to even like take on an intern, especially when the companies that you're interested in directly have some sort of stake in COVID-19. And when it comes to recruiting, I definitely think it's gotten a lot harder, just in terms of being able to network and associate with other people. But in other ways, it might have improved just because these companies are a lot more catered to remote work with more flexible hours, with better work times, and just really like incorporating more work-life balance. Because when you're working from home, I mean, there's no transportation, there's none of that. So they're a lot more lenient on some ways, but when it comes to recruiting, I think it's definitely gone a bit more difficult just because of, I mean, a more competitive applicant pool and decreased um, roles available.
I can come in and speak. Definitely agree with Steven as well, but as I said before, maybe I'll talk a little bit on the positive side of things, but I think roles are still available. I think, believe it or not, like um, a lot of companies, I think especially with it being almost a year since we officially declared it a pandemic and moved back home or quarantined, a lot of companies are definitely kind of switching their gears and like getting into a remote, more towards a remote circumstance, or just having opportunities that are more remote for their internship programs. But definitely it's limited, but what I will say is that what I spoke on before, they have a lot more opportunities that you might not previously have had. And just in terms of networking, I think it's a lot more convenient now. Like you can be setting up meetings with maybe 2 or 3 people hopping in back and forth. But if this were in person, um, let's say you would have to drive like an hour to see someone and another hour to see someone. I think you have a lot more opportunities and in terms of just meeting and networking, but it's definitely just play to your strengths, really think outside of the box and use the resources that you have. And kind of, I know that it's a very dark time right now for everyone, and the pandemic is something that everyone hopes to see will end soon and be over and done with, but there are just certain ways to work around it and certain loopholes.
And just to speak a little about like my experience as well, I think personally right now, the internship I have right now, I wouldn't have been able to kind of take that on and be a part-time student if it wasn't for the pandemic and for my internship being virtual. So, you know, opportunities are always coming, might not be like the ones that you've been expecting, but don't kind of overlook those like hidden gems of like startups or smaller size companies, because they are always constantly looking for support and like help from students and want to onboard you as interns. So yeah, just keep your eyes peeled, set up those job alerts. You never know when kind of that opportunity to really launch your career forward will kind of come up. And yeah, recruiting is just always hard to, I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but yeah, just stay positive and just like keep on going.
Okay, so it seems like we are almost out of time. So there's one last question in the Q&A chat. So for those of you planning on going to graduate school, how do you find out what kinds of skills or specific internship experiences were necessary or useful for applying in the future?
Oh, I'm sorry. I did not know it unmuted, but I do not plan on going to grad school, so I cannot answer this question.
If you mean by graduate school, like also professional school, I'm hoping you're going to med school. And when it comes to experiences that I hope to have as both like a physician, not only as a physician, but as also like a physician leader, I think really intersecting where healthcare meets leadership when it comes to maybe healthcare policy, health consulting, these interdisciplinary places, and really figuring out where the future of healthcare lies. It definitely helped open my eyes a little bit about what I would want to do when I was in or after medical school. But I guess my overall take on this is that you don't really want to use an internship as sort of like leverage for graduate school. I think like graduate school itself, or I mean, medical, law, business school, you can really cater yourself to those professional school applications, but it's a little bit draining to really, I would say, like endure that just for the sake of applications. If you're really able to find this niche where you can combine an internship, and it intersects with, health, law, business, or any sort of graduate academic program, then you're a lot better off when you enjoy it and they complement each other.
Okay, it seems like we're out of time, so can we please go to the next slide? Okay, so a big thank you to everyone for attending today's panel, especially our speakers. We cannot stress enough the importance of networking and keeping in touch with personal, professional, or academic contacts. So just showing up to today's panel is a huge step towards achieving your professional goals. We've included our speakers' LinkedIn so that you can connect with them after this panel and so that you can ask them any of your unanswered questions. We will also provide the link in an email that we'll send after this webinar. So thank you all once again for joining us today. This is the end of our panel. We hope that you were able to take away something from today's event. As always, SARC is here to support your professional and academic endeavors. Schedule a consultation with us today to talk about internships or get your resume and cover letter reviewed. And have a great rest of your week.
Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you panelists again for being here with us. Bye everyone.
Thank you for hosting this.
Yes.